Hello, I'm Coco Sugar Cosplay and I'm back with another video. Recently, I had the honor of being selected as one of the 2021 Fabric Mart Fabricistas. This means that I'll be partnering with Fabric Mart Fabrics throughout the year for various projects just like this one. For my first project, I wanted to make something that was beginner friendly. In this instance, if you can't tell, my favorite character from Sanrio is none other than Gudetama. I absolutely love him. I mean, just look at him. He's so cute. How could you not love him, right? So for this first project, I decided to make a Gudetama inspired outfit. Specifically, a Gudetama inspired Pinafore that I can wear to conventions, perhaps on days where I don't want to be in full cosplay, but I still want to look fun and kind of evoke one of my favorite characters. So that's enough of me talking. Let's jump into the build.
Alright, so every good project starts out with a design. I started by sketching out what I wanted my Pinafore to look like and making some notes about patterns and measurements. Next, I started making my patterns. I already had a circle skirt pattern in my stash, and I knew that for the straps, because they were simple shapes, I could just rely on measurements. But for the waistband, I decided to start patterning it out onto some scrap paper using the measurements I had noted in my drawing. Next, it was time to start cutting into the fabric. For this, I chose a beautiful linen suiting with this crosshatch weave that's in this beautiful shade of marigold, very reminiscent of the Gudetama yellow I was going for. After getting out my trusty circle skirt pattern, I started by tracing out where the waistband would be onto my fabric. I also measured out how long I wanted the skirt to be, since I knew it would be a bit shorter than the pattern I was using. If you don't have a circle skirt pattern handy, that's totally okay. I made this one myself using a generator online. I will link one in the description so that you can make your own. Frankly, it's been with me through the construction of many cosplays, and I honestly use it for just about everything, so it's really handy. Next, I ironed on a simple layer of interfacing to one of the front panels of the waistband. I ended up changing my plan from having a zipper closure to having an elastic waistband, but I ended up only using elastic in the back of the waistband while I kept the front nice and flat and crisp with this interfacing to help stiffen the waistband and help it hold its shape. After the interfacing was done, I then proceeded to iron the rest of the pattern pieces that I had cut. I know that this phase of ironing isn't the most fun and can seem like it really isn't a necessity. However, it is important to have your pieces ironed. It makes the sewing and construction of your garment so much easier to do, and you never know if a wrinkle will end up warping the shape of your piece. So it's also good for spotting any weird inconsistencies in your cuts. Because my fabric is prone to fraying and because I will not be using a lining in this project, I chose to finish off the inside edges of my pieces on my serger. If you don't have a serger, that's okay. You could use frayed block or another edge finishing technique like a French seam to contain the raw edges. Right now, I'm sewing together the pieces that will form the ruffle that sticks out of the top edge of the strap on either side of the shoulders. After my seam was done on the serger, I pressed it open with an iron. Here you'll see me use my tailor's ham, it's that kind of weird pillow under the iron, to help get the curve in the seam correct. Once the seams were pressed, I then folded them over, pressed them again to keep it nice and crisp, and then ran the edges through the serger once again to finish them off. Because these pieces were going to be ruffled, I then had to measure out how long I wanted my ruffles to be. So I took a look at the overall length of each piece and measured out what the ideal length would be with the ruffles completed. Once I had determined the length I needed, I then gathered each piece by hand with a needle and thread. You do these by sewing a couple of really long stitches in your pieces along the edge, and then gently gathering them together after your piece is done until you get to your ideal length. Next, I had to pin the ruffle to the straps. Because I want the ruffle to show on the outside, I have to pin it facing the inside, which will then be the right side of the strap. You see me doing that here as I gently spread the ruffle between the points I had marked on the strap and pin it into place. Next, I go to my sewing machine this time to sew down the edge of the strap and sew the ruffle into place. I do this for both straps. After the straps are sewn, I carefully turn it right sides out. If you have a tube turner, this would be a good time to use it, but since the strap is fairly wide, I just used my hands here. Took a little bit of time, but it wasn't so bad in the end. Next up, you guessed it, more ironing. I promise you'll be doing this a lot during the project, but it will all pay off in the end when you have nice clean edges on your piece. Once your straps are pressed, you can pin them to the inside of your front waistband. Just like with the ruffles, you'll want to fold the straps to the inside as you sew along the edge so that when you flip it right sides out again, they'll be on the outside where they should be. Next, I'm on to the back half of the waistband. In this instance, I am sewing a simple seam down one side, turning it inside out, and then stretching a piece of elastic through the tube. You'll want to make sure that your elastic is shorter than the length of the back waistband so that it can stretch over your body when you go to pull on the pinafore. I like to temporarily fix my elastics with safety pins. It can handle the tension better as I sew than a regular pin. It's important to keep that tension as you go and sew the elastic to the waistband. I'm using a stretch stitch here to keep everything in place. It prevents the elastic from turning inside the waistband as I wear the garment, and it keeps things nice and stretchy. I sewed the front and back waistbands together on my serger to make sure that the seams weren't going to fray. Now it's on to the skirt. I started off by going over all of the raw edges on the hem with my serger. On my sewing machine, I also added a straight stitch about 3/4 of an inch from the hemline that I had just sewn on the serger. This will help me turn in the hem with my iron and act as a guiding point. Now, hemming circle skirts can be a bit of a daunting task at times, but don't be discouraged. Use the line of stitches that you just made as a guide for where to fold your hem in. Go slowly and press to make sure that you're setting it in place for when you sew it later. I'm only doing a single fold here, but you could easily choose to do a double fold. Alternatively, if you want to get fancy, you could even add a decorative trim at the end. Once your hem is pressed, secure everything on the machine with a simple straight stitch. One thing that I did do before attaching the skirt was to sew on some decorative buttons. I had these vintage ones in my stash and I thought that they would complement the outfit pretty well. Next, you'll want to attach the skirt to the waistband. I did this on my serger. Lastly, you'll want to do a quick fit test and then sew the back straps to the back waistband. After this point, you're essentially done and can enjoy your pinafore in style.
All right, and that's it. Thank you guys so much for coming today. I hope you enjoyed watching the build. I hope you learned something. I know I learned a lot making it. Once again, please check out fabricmartfabrics.com. They are awesome, a great resource if you need fabric, especially for a good price. I will link them below in the description. Once again, appreciate your support as always. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. All right, bye.